Hello everybody, Letitia Gibson here from Country Change for another webinar. I really do love these webinars because they're a really great opportunity to connect with you guys and really bring some interesting localized content that I believe, based on the feed that we get from you, really, I guess, provides good information about the region that you're exploring, which is the Riverina in New South Wales. This morning we've got Gordon Hinds, who's the Managing Director of Better Energy Technology, and he's got this really amazing project that he's launching, which is a renewable energy plant in Lockhart. But rather than me tell you about it, I'll be asking Gordon some questions and we can go from there. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, tell me a little bit about your business and this plant that you're building in Lockhart.
Well, we decided to make a demonstration plant for a renewable energy town, and we chose Lockhart. At the moment, there's no town in Australia that is powered by renewable energy. There's renewable energy plants nearby, they might be down the street, across the road, but they actually don't power the town. So ours is unique, and we're offering long-term low-cost power solutions which are renewable energy driven directly to the town. And the idea there is that they get power security, lower prices, and it's a proof of concept. And it's really taken off.
So to put this in context, for those of you watching who haven't been to Lockhart, Lockhart is about 60 kilometres from Wagga Wagga, which many people know, and it has a population, the township itself, I think, or the shire itself has a population of about 4,000 extended, but within the township itself, I think it's only about 1,200. I should probably fact check that. And I used to actually live there myself about 5 years ago, so I probably should know more. But it's a lovely little town. It's called the Veranda town. It's got beautiful, rich heritage. So why did you choose Lockhart for this, I guess you could say, national first in what you're trying to set out to achieve here?
Well, I'm based in Sydney. I'm based in New South Wales. So first of all, it was a New South Wales town was the priority. Second thing is that we needed a town that was a manageable scale. So Lockhart's, you're quite right, just over 1,000 people. And it has also a whole bunch of things that bring it together in a pretty unique way that makes the trial a lot more possible. And so they are things like, it's got really good electrical infrastructure. So the existing infrastructure, we can harness and turn that into a renewable energy driven system. And that's from Essential Energy, the distributor. It's got a really good community, an engaged community, and particularly with the council as well. And they're very strong supporters of this program. So without that community engagement and I guess social license, that would be a lot harder. So kind of those two things came together extremely well. And it's also not that far from a major centre. So Wagga, you're right, it's about a 50-minute drive. And it's close to Wagga Airport, which is a regional airport too. So accessibility was another issue. It's connected to the NBN. It's got some things, it's got what I call the bones of a great expansion story.
And a really unique thing about Lockhart as well, we've not only got Wagga down the road, you've also got probably very similar distances between Griffith and Albury. And that opens up a whole road infrastructure, particularly for transport and freight and whatnot, that I know businesses are particularly interested in. As a businessman, you've mentioned the community was a big, I guess, decision factor for you. But what else about Lockhart really, I guess, intrigued you to say this is a viable project in this small Riverina town?
Well, you know, to be kind of honest about it, I was looking at it from a kind of an infrastructure point of view. I wasn't really looking at it because it's a pretty town, which it is, and it's the Veranda town. So it wasn't like an appealing place, wasn't the priority for me. That being said, you know, if you want to live in a country town, it's got to be one of the better ones around. It's got fantastic services. It's got, you know, a hospital, regional hospital, which is unusual. It's got 3 schools, and it's, you know, it's got a town swimming pool, and it's got some very good infrastructure from a social point of view that really aids. But it's languishing like most country towns are, and you know, the state government's projection for most country towns, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school here, is for economic decline, not increase. So we also wanted to make an impact. I wanted to make an impact in a town that was effectively, virtually a clean slate. So you could measure your impact that you're bringing to the town. We knew it was, services were leaving. That's not a new story in any country town. The bank closes, the chemist decides not to be there, but there is a chemist in Lockhart, so I shouldn't say that. But you know what I mean? It's got diminishing services. And so we can actually also then really clearly measure our impact, which I think is going to be absolutely considerable to that town.
One thing I think is really unique is you mentioned it's got connection to the NBN. So a lot of the people that we speak to who are making tree changes, some of them are keeping their Sydney or Melbourne jobs and moving to the Riverina and just working online or commuting back every couple of weeks or whatnot. But I think it's Lockhart and a number of other Riverina towns are having to reinvent themselves. This pressure of economic decline, drought, all of those pressures are really putting, I guess, making them refocus what they can do to reinvigorate their economy, create a new identity for themselves. And Lockhart seems to be really positioning itself. It's shown as a great area for entrepreneurship. So a number of people own businesses, both in agriculture, because it's a big agricultural community, but also other startups, whether it be bricks and mortar retail, that are starting up, and another exciting business that is being drawn to the community based on, from what I believe, your project and your decision to build there. Tell me a little bit about that business that's moving to Lockhart.
Well, the momentum behind the opportunity for businesses to become part of what we're doing, and we're kind of a catalyst because we're providing them with power in a way that they hadn't had before. So one business in particular, which I think the ones you're referring to, is to grow. It's to grow vegetables and greens in shipping containers, and then have Woolworths as a client. Now the advantage of that is that they can generate 34 different crops a year, so you get a much higher output. Unfortunately, if you're going to grow vegetables inside shipping containers, you need to create light and have a controlled environment. So they're quite energy hungry. So we can actually directly power that business, and that it's an enormous advantage to them. So they're going to be employing 40 people. Now it's in the planning stages. It hasn't been committed, but I think it will go ahead. And that's just one business. There's another business which we've just teamed up with yesterday, which is already in town, and they produce fertiliser. So part of our energy process is, in fact, we'll be producing methane and then using that methane to drive a burner, which will then create electricity. Now, the downside of doing that process is you need a lot of material to create a small amount of gas. But the good news is our plant is sited right next to this fertiliser plant, and they can take that off-take 15,000 tonnes a year, which we'll be producing. And we can use that as soil augmentation. So it'll be reasonable grade fertiliser we produce as a result. That increases their business. So suddenly they've got now another 2 or 3 people. So you've got 40 people working in the containerised food business, you've got 2 or 3 people now extra working in the other business, and things starting to happen. And on the NBN front, I think there's some innovation that we can bring to the party there as well. So, increasing connectivity, as you said, is really important. But, if you're looking at doing something like changing and moving to these locations, I mean, first of all, you've got to like the country. So, obviously, there's no point in going there and saying, oh, it's not like the city. And, it is the country. So accept that. It's a small community. It's quite a tight community. So if you're a community-focused person, I think you get a lot of other benefits out of it. But, in terms of simple things like house prices, you can buy a 3-bedroom house in Lockhart for $180,000. And, it's not an old house. So there's house and land packages available council. So if you've got some, as they say, off-farm income in rural areas, you can end up having a pretty successful life, and you're not disconnected. Just, with the NBN or the internet, you're as up as what the latest cafe is in Surrey Hills as anyone else. And not only that, you can jump on a plane, albeit it is sadly expensive, but you can jump on a plane and fly to Sydney or Melbourne or wherever you want to go.
Or you can drive to Melbourne. It's only 4.5 hours.
You could drive to, it's closer than Sydney.
Driving to Sydney is about 5.5, isn't it? To Sydney?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So Melbourne's closer. So totally right. So, I think it's a perception that you're kind of semi-isolated, but the truth is you're not. And, I think you'd have a great lifestyle out there if you like to live in that area, and lots of people should and do. So,
well, when I was in Lockhart, I visited Melbourne more than I do now, living outside of that area. When I lived in Canberra, I visited Melbourne maybe once a year, but when I lived in Lockhart, I was in Melbourne every couple of months, because it was just sort of in the country. Just down the road is a few more clicks than what we're used to, but you get much further, obviously, in the country without lovely city traffic. What I loved about that,
as I experienced today coming into the city, and sadly I was late for this webinar, so I got completely sidetracked.
The only things that generally hold you up on city country roads are cows crossing or sheep. Or the kangaroos, they can be another.
So we look like we're going to attract quite a lot of business to Lockhart as a result of what we're doing. But the other part of what we're doing is we're exporting a lot of power. So we're turning country towns into power stations that export power. And again, it's this link between the towns. So other towns, for instance, don't get that benefit. Like, Moree's got a big solar farm outside it, but nothing benefits Moree. And Katrina Humphries is a terrific, hardworking mayor there. I mean, they haven't got a penny out of that. And there's no power agreement that goes to the town. So there's no cost savings and no benefits they can attract businesses to come to those towns. And with the NBN, for instance, the NBN in Lockhart is good, but it needs upgrading. And through this process, we've discovered a business that in fact can harness the fibre optic cables that are already there, which bizarrely no one seems to know about, but they're in the transmission towers. And they didn't really need to build the NBN. It was already built by the electrical companies. And what you had to do is plug into it. Now that system is way faster than the NBN that's put in at the moment. So I think we'll be able to increase connectivity. So we'll probably get high speed data transmission going at Lockhart as well. So, it's having some from outside the town, looking at what the assets are, sometimes is an enormous benefit. And we're looking at doing a project at Hay. And, Hay is, again, a great example of, a town that's bigger, it's 2,000 people, but there's a lot of things that can be done there too. And there's a terrific new CEO of the council, David Webb. He's an entrepreneurial, hardworking guy, and I've worked with him before.
Yeah, I know David.
And I think we can do some really good things together. And already we're talking about some similar projects, but also building this catalyst for change, which he's really up for. And I think it's going to be exciting times for Hay.
Yes, Hay stole David from Lockhart, so he's a.
You're up on the town politics, but he was farewelled fondly, so it wasn't like.
Oh no, David's he's very much loved. He used to work for Lockhart Council as the engineering head. So
it was, and he's the principal reason why I got involved with Lockhart.
Oh, great! There you go. Small world.
This is small world.
What I love about this story is you've sort of touched on this a number of times. You've got someone coming in from the outside, looking at infrastructure and all the possibilities, but then you've got this whole ecosystem of businesses being created with spin-off effects, and obviously that's only going to build a self-sustained little economy and ecosystem, but it's going to bring a lot of attention on Lockhart, I think. The government's given a big grant towards this. It's got a number of newspaper articles written about it, a bit of media attention, and same with the shipping container business. There's lots of benefits to this, and of the cost savings to the community and the council. You were mentioning a buyback opportunity for council down the track.
That's right. Well, when we presented to council, we said, look, we thought the fairest way to have community ownership, of the technology and the plant, particularly to Lockhart, would be through the council. I think there's some other models being bandied around the country. Most of them involve fairly wealthy individuals, and I'm not against wealthy individuals. They're great people. But I think that they create a distorted power balance in the town, whereas the council is in fact the democracy of investment, if you like, for a town. And I think they're the great custodians. I mean, they own the water and the sewage effectively. They own the utilities, if you like, not entirely, but that's kind of managed by them. So it's appropriate that they do the power, and I think that is a great opportunity. They can also borrow money from the state government at incredibly low rates, so it makes it financially possible. But they want to wait until it's a proven project, and they don't want to commit localised money on an unproven thing, which may or may not have liabilities that they can't afford, and that's fair enough. So they nominated a period of time, which they said was 10 years. I think it'll be sooner than that, but they've got first options on that. So yeah, we always had that in mind. It probably will end up being 50% or something like that owned by the council. It would unlikely be 100%.
But they're obviously doing their due diligence in taking their time to see the project underway and seeing the benefits. I think another important factor of this is it's renewable energy. There's a big focus from conscientious consumers looking to things like solar. Just tell me a little bit about the infrastructure, because it's a combination of renewable energy. It's not just solar, is it?
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, you hear reports about, solar will power 40,000 houses a day or whatever it is. They make these numbers up. But what people don't realise is it powers it for 4 hours a day on average. That's the average output. So, I mean, yes, you get long time in summer, but you get short times in winter, and you get clouds. So the average in New South Wales is about 4.2 hours a day. So what do you do with the other 20 hours? Well, if you're going to have renewable energy, you've got to do something else. And what you do is you do batteries. But then batteries themselves also need to be large, because if you get 3 or 4 days of cloud, your battery's going to wear out, or you're going to run out of power. So then you need something else as well. So then we looked at using methane generation to run a methane generator to provide, background 24/7 power. So it's going to be providing about, a quarter of the power the town needs. So that'll just chug away in the background. And now we looked also at getting some other new technology. Part of this was, to test and experiment with things as well. And so we're looking at doing air compression technology, which has kind of been around for a while. A few people had stabs at it, but I think we've got a new take on it, and that's going to be pretty exciting. And again, you can kind of store quite a lot of power with air. I mean, it's kind of, it's not.
Who would have thought?
It's not a toxic substance. It's kind of, so you use sunlight to compress the air, and then you let it out. It's a bit like you have a giant car tire, and then you ease the pressure out of the car tire over 10 hours, and it drives a turbine. And that's also got another advantage too, because it's got what they call spinning reserve. And whilst don't get too complex with everyone, it's important that power generation on our grid has a spinning element to it. In other words, something is spinning. I know it sounds funny, but it's extremely important to keep the stability of the network alive. If you don't have a spinning system rotating, it doesn't get distributed in an even pattern, and that disruptive pattern is threatening to the grid. So we're bringing stability to the grid and power and innovation, and along the way, sweeping up this new wave of investment that I think is going to be really great for the town. And, who knows where this is going to end. There is talk, we're in talks today, actually, with a very large institution to build an even larger system in Lockhart Shire. But, I mean, that at the moment is just talk, but talk does sometimes lead to action, which leads to planning. And that would be a massive investment. That'd be over $1 billion. So
I think sometimes it just takes one person to have a bit of confidence, and the rest is sort of, I'm sure there's many adages around that could be applied here, but it creates that flow on effect. It just takes that one person to create that.
I hope you're right.
So do I. I mean, it's a great little town, and it's got many, many benefits, as we've talked about, but it's the community that I think is really impressive. I came across Lockhart when I filmed their Spirit of the Land commercial about 8 years ago.
Yeah, which has now been a huge runaway success. They have like 5,000 people turn up. It's just, town goes crazy. It's great. I mean,
and that started as a community project, and I returned there after the 2014 floods, I think it was.
2012?
Sorry?
2012, maybe?
2012. I was going to say that date doesn't seem right. They did have more later on, but, helping farmers repair fences, everyone was chipping in, everyone was sandbagging, everyone was, and that sense of community, I think, is very highly publicised in the media when those kinds of disasters happen. But to witness it firsthand is something really special, and Lockhart's got that.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned too, by the way, talking a bit more about the location. I mean, one reason why the containerised food business can come to town is not only because we're offering them renewable energy power, which they can then sell as part of their package to Woolworths, for instance, But the Woolworths DC, which is their distribution centre, is at Albury, and it's an hour's travel from Lockhart. So, you know, there's a real practical reason why it works there as well. So, yeah.
Well, anyone wanting more information about the opportunities in Lockhart, the industrial estates, housing, this project, Lockhart Council Economic Development Officer is Jennifer O'Connor. You can find her details through the Lockhart page on the Country Change website, countrychange.com.au. And if people want to get in contact with you for any reason, Gordon, or read more about this project, where should they go to?
Well, again, you know, they could go to our website, which is betterenergy.tech. One thing that's got me going about being involved with Regional Australia, and I mentioned this before in the opening, was you really have a tangible effect on a town. Whereas if you do something in Sydney, I mean, you're one of 5 million people, there's no real tangible effect. You know, it's like, if you're there, it doesn't really matter. Does anyone care? Not really. Come to Lockhart and you change people's lives. It's pretty good.